Hi everyone, welcome to the third session of Arafast MedTech Chat. In our last session, we spoke about the new medical device regulation, the MDR. Today, we're going to be focusing on classification of medical software. Specifically, we want to expand on Rule 11 of Annex 8 of the MDR, and we will talk about software as a medical device. Here with me today is Rok Robotin. He's a compliance officer at Arafast. I want to talk to him to get further insight into the very topic. Hi, Rok.
Hi, Igor.
Okay, Rok, let's get straight to the point. How is medical software classified?
I would say just the same as any other medical device, it is classified on the risk associated by its use. That would be a general observation. But there are some considerations which have to be taken into account, like medical software in general, it needs to be treated an active medical device for all classification purposes. This is one of them. And whenever parts of a medical device is classification, so the classification of software is the same as it is for the device itself. Standalone software as the distinction, however, it is considered to be independent from any physical medical device. So there is a specific classification rule, so-called Rule 11, which you mentioned before, which is specifying the classification for the software as medical device itself, just as well.
What does Rule 11 actually say? What are the key points?
Rule 11, it is all about classification of software. And one needs to go and read it through. Just let me go quickly through. To be very specific, it says if software is providing information which is used to take decisions in diagnosis or treatment, then it says it is class 2A. If decisions can cause death or irreversible deterioration of state of health of the patient, it is class 3. Or if such decisions can use serious deterioration or surgical intervention, then it is class 2B. It is also saying about software which is intended for monitoring of physiological processes, and it would be class 2A. Or if it is vital physiological parameters, so that they would pose immediate danger to the patient, then it would be class 2B. And finally, it speaks about any other software that it is class 1. And there would not be many cases in class 1, I would say. However, such a free interpretation of the rule, my recommendation would be, reread the rule each time and re-understand the rule each time you do the classification.
So in other words, classification is one of the first steps in development of medical device, and it is a very important step. You don't want to get it wrong.
Correct.
Which software is affected by Rule 11?
Essentially, Rule 11 is addressing all medical device software. There is no specific statement that the standalone software would be mostly considered. However, in practice, it is, yes, about the software as medical device. So about the software which does not influence the operation of a specific physical medical device.
How has classification of software as medical device changed under the new MDR?
Well, with Rule 11, in MDR, of course, we get more precise classification of software. And obviously, as a consequence, there will be a number of cases where software as medical device will have to be reclassified to a higher class.
To put things into perspective, Rok, can you give us some examples of software as medical device?
Well, yes, but first, to make it clear, software as a medical device, it is not part of, and it is not influencing a specific physical medical device. So the range of such softwares would be rather wide. We can start from a broad field of, smartphone applications. A good example here is an insulin dose calculation based on glucose level of a patient. Further on, if we stay with smartphones, there are softwares which are preparing and displaying the electrocardiogram signals, probably from a wearable ECG device. Or, for example, that would be softwares which are used in diagnostics for anomalies detection on ECGs. These, however, probably would be not running on smartphone anymore. Further on, treatment and dose planning software or tumor contouring software, both of them being used for proton cancer therapy. That's also software as a medical device. Or image processing software, which is normally we are talking about post-processing used for detection of cancerous tissue. Here we would be addressing applications for breast cancer detection or skin cancer identification. Or I would say software for differential diagnosis from blood sample analysis results. This is also another example of software as a medical device. So yes, it's about a relatively broad range of softwares in the category.
Can you clarify which of these example applications would fall under class 1, class 2A, class 2B, and class 3?
Well, yeah, first we have to clarify something else. First, we have to clarify that the classification is driven by the precise intended use as it is specified by the manufacturer. So just the title of the medical device software might not be saying everything. So as a quick assessment, for example, a treatment planning software or contouring software for tumors in radio-oncology, it can be class 2B or it can be class 3, depending on the risks associated with the intended purpose, of course. And further on, we have insulin dose calculator. That one will find in class 2B. And on the other side, on the other extreme, if we are talking about fitness application for cardio health, of course, it is least risky. It is class 1.
Okay, are there any specifics for software as a medical device when it comes to cybersecurity, patient data, and safety?
MDR basically does not use the term cybersecurity anyhow, but still there would be several direct requirements addressing the topic. There would be in general safety and performance requirements, there would be a requirement number 40, which is first addressing the risks originating from the interaction between software and IT environment. And further on in requirement number 17, it is addressing protection against unauthorized access, addressing cybersecurity in a way. And also it is addressing cybersecurity through the information which must be provided to the user by specification of minimum IT requirements which must be established by the user, of course. So these are also including the protection against unauthorized access. So not directly, but through several requirements, we have cybersecurity well present within the MDR.
Where can our viewers find some helpful guidance on this topic?
So publications are many, but my recommendation would go, stay with official publications. That is starting from the top of pyramid, the text of MDR itself. Then we have MDCG, Medical Device Coordination Group guidances, and we have standards. So far, no standards have been harmonized yet under MDR. But yeah, I would say MDCG guidance give a rather good explanation and interpretation of the MDR requirements. So related to medical device software, there's guidance 2019-11, which is explaining about qualification and classification of software. Then cybersecurity is explained in guidance, I think it is 2019-16, for sure it is. And then clinical evaluation of medical device software, it is discussed in 2020-1.
To conclude, it may be useful to go through specific standards that relate to software as medical device.
Well, there are several standards addressing specific areas of software. But, well, I would say 4 or 5 standards might be shortlisted because they add the most value to the medical device software development. Just to mention first, there are no standards which would be harmonized yet under MDR. So one has to follow the requirements for the state of the art. And starting from the top, from the quality management system, one would have to follow the ISO 13485 from 2016. Along with it, there is a risk management for medical devices, as it is specified in ISO 14971, last published in 2019. Since it is not addressing medical software directly, there is a good aid in the technical report. I can mention IEC-TR 80002-1. It speaks about how to apply ISO 14971 to medical software. When we are talking about risks, one should not forget about risks originating from the use of software. And here IEC 62366 gives a good set of requirements on the implementation of usability engineering. And yeah, well, probably the most important one for the development of medical software, that would be IEC 62304, published in 2006 and then amended in 2015, which is addressing the development and maintenance of software through the software lifecycle processes. These would be kind of most important standards which would have to be considered by anybody who is actually tackling the field of medical software development.
Rok, thank you for joining us again today. If any of our viewers want to know more about the topic or want to discuss other medical device development matters with Rok, please get in contact with us and we would very much like to hear about the specifics of your project. I wish I see you next time at our next MedTech chat. And until then, have a good day.